I know this has probably been brought up by several people at this point, but I wanted to make a video about it specifically, seeing as how I have so many videos about Bonnie on the channel now, because I really do like her as a character. I think she's really neat. But I think all the transformations she has had so far have been inspirations based on the important people in her life. For example, the very first one that's super interesting is that when she becomes an adult after wanting to become older in order to become better, because Kuma told her that she would be cured of her sapphire skill disease when she becomes 10, she immediately transforms into an adult. Said adult just so happens to look like Guinea. I think this is the only incidental transformation because, of course, she would look like her mother because they are biologically related. But that's the first really significant one. She transforms into her mother and is remarked by everyone how much she looks like her mother, even more attractive than her mother, which is a very interesting statement, but okay. Now, the interesting part is when she tries to become an old woman, because after she discovers that she has a devil fruit, she immediately tries to become an old lady, but she can't. However, when she actually meets Connie for the first time, she immediately is able to transform into Connie, into an old woman. So I'm thinking here is that the old woman transformation was directly inspired by Connie, who then ends up being a mother figure to Bonnie throughout the Kuma flashback. Now, chronologically speaking, the first time that we see the big bulky transformation of Bonnie's is in chapter 1101, in which she challenges her uncle Gio Gio to a sparring match out of frustration. This transformation is an obvious reference to her father, Bartholomew Kuma, because she is sporting the Buccaneer physique, in which we do all arms, all chest, all day, and completely ignore leg day every single time, which is very funny. I love this transformation. It's so good. But yeah, she has a big, bulky upper body and a very teeny tiny lower body. This is her father's form. Now, this sort of weird body proportion alteration is what leads us to the Nika-ish future, in which she bases the transformation off the stories she has heard about the deity Nika, of which her father taught her the teachings of. And then, based on what he told her, all that she knows is that the deity has a rubber body and can fight freely. So, of course, she kind of, I guess, internalizes that, and is why she is able to stretch her arm out, resembling what we now know as a Gigant pistol when Luffy goes gear third. So yeah, she is inspired by the deity. Of course, she cares about the deity because her father cares about it, and therefore she transforms into it. Now, what's so interesting about the last two transformations from the flashback in chronological order, the Kuma-like future and the Nika-ish future, is that it really does show how adept she has become at using her devil fruit, because the two things that these two transformations have in common is that they completely alter her body's proportions, whereas the first two are basically how one would assume her growth pattern would be normally. Like, she would look like her mother, obviously, and probably shrivel up into an old prune when she becomes an old woman. But these two are completely fictitious futures that she would not be able to achieve normally. One, in having the same body proportions as her father, and two, growing a giant arm to resemble the sun deity Nika. So with that being said, this makes me think, if these are based off of the people or things that she holds very dearly, it could lead to her actually copying the Straw Hats if she does join the crew, which makes me think that the Nika-ish future is going to be the one that's impacted the most, because now she knows very personally how the deity looks and who the deity is, because now she has the context of how Kuma felt about Luffy, and now she sees that Luffy is Nika. With that being said, it would make sense to me if in the future we see Bonnie take on forms that represent the other various people that are important to her in her life. One such person that I think will probably be coming first or very soon is Vegapunk. Vegapunk has been a very important figure in her life, obviously, because he first cured her of the fire scale disease. And after viewing all the memories that were contained inside Kuma's memory bubble, she now knows that he wasn't really ultimately responsible for ruining Kuma. All these things were mandated and forced upon him to carry out the plan against Kuma's autonomy in the way that he did. So it would make sense for her, with all this resolve now, to take on a form that looks like Vegapunk, a brainy future or a Vegapunk-ish future in which she grows a giant head and tries to think of different ideas. This may actually work, as she might become smarter when she does this, or this could simply be a gag transformation. Now, this reminds me, seeing as how I've made so many videos on how Chopper and Bonnie are similar, it reminds me of when in the pre-time skip, when Chopper would use his rumble balls to boost the brain power of his brain point and use an ability called Scope, in which he could actually see the weak points of his opponent by concentrating on them. So, yeah, Bonnie would have a brain boosting power if she does have a Vegapunk-like future, just like how Chopper is able to boost his brain power through the use of rumble balls in the pre-time skip. Now, going down the line of important people in Bonnie's life, it would then make sense for her to also have a Sentomaru-like future, in which she has a very rounded body, and perhaps in this form, she prioritizes defense. Much like how Sentomaru has often said that he has the world's best defense. He most likely has said that in Bonnie's presence over the year that she was in Vegapunk's care, so it would make sense for her to copy that in the future and become a female Sentomaru. It would also be very funny if this is when she discovers hockey, if she does get hockey at all. So I could see her getting that and achieving hockey if she does eventually copy Sentomaru. This too, again, would be very similar to Chopper's guard point, because in guard point, he does grow a bunch of hair and turn into a literal ball of fluff, and that is his most defensive state. Well, other than monster point, but you get the point. Now, I'm not forgetting her uncle Gyo, who served on her crew. However, the thing about him is that he's kind of got the same physique as Sentomaru. So I guess a Rotund sumo-like transformation would serve as a reference to both Sentomaru and Gyo in that way, if she does have a transformation like that in the future. But we shall see. Now, if she does join the Straw Hats, that changes some things, because now they would be her second found family. In being that, her transformations would probably be altered. One that most definitely will change in the future is her Nika-ish future, because now Nika has a name. She knows him personally. That is Luffy. So this will probably be a Luffy-ish future. Now, how this transformation will change, I'm not really sure, but I think it would be a bit more of a proper transformation as opposed to just being grow arm big for giant punch. I think it'll be more sophisticated than that. In what way or how it will develop, I'm not really sure, but the sky's the limit. We don't really know much about how this future transformation stuff actually works. But moving forward, I think, seeing as how Zoro is the first Straw Hat that she ever met, it would make sense too that she would have or develop a Zoro in future, in which I think she would just become a buffer version of her regular adult form, because the primary aspect of Zoro is that he's just a buff dude. So I think it would make sense for her to have a transformation like that, and it will be very funny if she starts to maybe like use 3 pipes or 3 pole arms in a similar fashion, in which how Zoro uses 3-sword style. She puts a pipe in her mouth and she has 2 pipes in her hands, and she tries to imitate moves that Zoro does. I think that'd be very funny. Thirdly, seeing as how she mentioned Sanji by name recently, it would be fun to see her have a Sanji-ish future, which I guess in a way would look like Chopper's jump point, in the pre-time skip, and when she just has like really long legs. Probably she kind of overshoots it and she looks like a freak or like a member of the long leg tribe, and she uses that to jump or try to kick and move in a similar way in how Sanji moves. And we've actually seen her use kicks before, in which she stops Luffy from attacking the one pacifista that looks like RoboCop in Egghead. So yeah, she already has kicking in her moveset, so it wouldn't be too hard to believe that she would have a Sanji-ish future in which she develops these long legs and she kicks in a similar fashion to Sanji. Now, when it comes to copying Robin and Nami, I don't think anything will actually happen, and she wouldn't really be inspired to copy anything from them because Bonnie already turns into an adult in her base kit of transformations. So it really wouldn't make sense for her to have another adult female transformation when she already becomes an adult female. Matter of fact, that's her preferred form to be in most of the time. So it doesn't really make sense to have another one that's basically the same thing to what she has already. And then two, even though Nami and Robin have a age difference between them, they don't look that much different physically between the two of them for Bonnie to be inspired by either one of them to have another transformation based on either one of them. So moving forward, I think it would be funny for a gag if she did copy Usopp and got a long nose. I don't know if she would have any skills based on that. I don't know what a Usopp-ish future would entail of, because I can't really see her with a gun or a slingshot. I can see her being very good at throwing stuff and hitting targets. That'd be kind of funny. But otherwise, not really. You know, I don't really see it. Now, seeing as how we've compared her to Chopper already, would she have a Chopper-ish future? I think so. And my idea for this is kind of silly, but I like it. So what if in a Chopper-ish future, it's just her in her normal state as a child, but she has a big poofy afro, and then maybe that big poofy afro helps her to like fly around or whatever. Like she falls from a great height, having this big poof of hair slows her descent. That's silly and goofy, I know, but I think it's very funny. So this is going in the video. We're keeping it in. Bam, there it is. Okay, so lastly, we have Brooke, Frankie, and Jinbei. Jinbei is kind of out because Jinbei, Sentomaru, and Gyo are all fat guys, and the similarity between Jinbei and Sentomaru is almost one-to-one because they're both fat sumo dudes who do sumo stuff. Even though Jinbei specializes in karate, it still comes off as a bunch of palm thrust and whatnot. So I would put that in the bucket for the Sentomaru-ish future. It just makes sense that you kind of just round all that up and put it there because they all look the same. And then we know there's an established fighting style for Bonnie to copy, of which she's probably seen through Sentomaru. This, of course, is another Chopper comparison because in the post-time skip, Chopper has the natural access to a transformation called Kung Fu Point, in which he too becomes a fat guy, or he looks like a fat guy who can use martial arts, in this case, Kung Fu, and he's very agile and quick. So, with Bonnie's Sentomaru-ish future / Jinbei-ish future, it would be an allegory to that, in which she too becomes rotund and good at a particular fighting style. In this case, probably sumo wrestling, as she knows Sentomaru a little bit better than Jinbei. So, okay, Jinbei's done. Moving forward, Frankie and Brooke. Frankie, I think, could be a more developed version of her Kuma-ish future, or we just kind of pour that into the Kuma-ish future and then there is no reference to Frankie. Both are possible, but I think it would probably be in the same way in how Chopper's heavy point developed from the pre-time skip into the post-time skip. It's just a more muscular version of the heavy point. That's what it turned into. It's a more monstrous version of heavy point. So the Frankie-ish future could just be a wider up top version to the Kuma-ish future that Bonnie can already do. Kind of a weak form, honestly, or argument for one, but it's possible. The Brooke one, I think, it would be very funny if she just got really tall and skinny, almost like emaciated looking. Spooky, but it could be cool for a gag. Or she just could just get really tall and she just copies that. And I think that would be good enough. She could also grow a big afro in this state as well, which would also be pretty funny. Kind of see her as just really tall and skinny for Brooke. I think that would be the most obvious route for her to go, because she can't turn into a skeleton. She can't die. That would be very dark and not really in the frame of mind of how I would think her powers would work. So yeah, tall, thin Bonnie with an afro. That's what I think it's probably possible if she were to have a Brooke-ish future. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed my 30,000th Bonnie video, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. But give me your thoughts.